first here. the meeting to order. Roll call, everybody's here. Attest to publication.
I saw it on the website.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I saw it at the bank today.
Super, thank you. Approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Who was that, Joni or Tina? Motion made by Shelley, seconded by Tina to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. I just have to get a different pen here. Okay. All righty. So public comments. John?
Okay. Dawn Paisley is the first one tonight.
Dawn?
Aye.
Hi, Dawn. Hi, Dawn.
Hello.
Go ahead whenever you're ready. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time tonight to be able to speak with you about this very important topic. I know you're going to be hearing a lot of testimony. You've probably already received phone calls and emails as well. But to start out with, I want to make sure that everyone understands that we all want the same thing. We all want our students back in the classroom. We all want the students back in school. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that the decisions that are made are bringing them back to our classrooms safely. There's a lot of expertise that I see before me, and there are a lot of expertise out in this community. We have lots of expert parents who are sending their marvelous kids to our classrooms. We have school board members with a lot of experience, 5, 10, and 20 years of experience being experts at those jobs. We have a lot of expert teachers I'm lucky enough to be working with in the Bangor School District, whether it's in-person learning or virtually. But what none of us have is expertise in what kind of metrics to be selected in order to follow decision-making in a global pandemic. We need to rely on those other experts out there, our medical professionals, our infectious disease experts, and our public health experts to guide us. I'm hoping tonight that as you hear this conversation, that you'll decide to stay with the metrics that you're currently using to determine whether or not we should be back in our classrooms or learning virtually. The metrics that you've already put in place have been already relaxed in one way to reflect municipal data. That was a request from the community. And instead of using the countywide metrics, we've now streamlined that. Your decision was to use the local municipality data, and that seems to be working very well. I want to be very clear once again that we know that a school is central in a community. It's central in a child's life, but it's also central to the whole community. There are a lot of things that our schools are providing for those students. Their social and emotional health, their dental health, their medical health, and other supports and services. And we understand the importance of all of those things. We want those students back, and we want them back, but we want them back when it is safe to do so. And we need to rely on those experts that we have. We need to look at that health data. We need to rely on those other people who have spent their lives figuring out how to do things safely in a global pandemic. Right now, we are heading toward the end of the finish line. We can see the finish line in the distance for this global pandemic, but I want us to cross that finish line together, but I want us to cross it safely, please. So I'm asking you again to support the current metrics that you have so that we can operate our schools safely, rely on the experts to help us, and get those students back as quickly as we can. We know it's where they belong. We know we want them in our classrooms. And thank you all so much for your time tonight. I know you're going to be hearing a lot of different viewpoints, and you have a lot to consider. But please consider the safety of your students, the safety of your staff, and the safety of the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you. John?
Yes, Mandy Piper. Up here.
Hi, Mandy. Go ahead
Hi there.
whenever you're ready. Welcome.
All right, thank you. Here we are again discussing the Harvard model and kids returning to face-to-face learning. I'd first like to mention the Harvard Global Health Institute is incorporating new information about how the virus spreads amongst children and the effectiveness of various mitigation measures. Even they recognize that the original model is not working. Last week, Mr. Winch tried to say we parents only want to compare when it benefits us. Not true. From the beginning, we have been wanting to compare to schools our size. That is not what Salem, Sparta, or La Crosse that Mr. Lane likes to use. And yes,
Mandy,
yes,
I just want to remind you, this is about school issues.
it is about school. I am
Not
talking
making
about that.
not making personal attacks on individuals.
I am not. I am stating
This
what
is
things
about-
are said.
This is about school issues.
That's what I'm talking about. We're talking about the schools we're comparing to.
Not attacking individuals.
I'm not. If you're taking it that way, obviously that something is wrong on your end.
I don't think anything's wrong on our end.
I'll continue. I reached out to Cashton and Melrose Mindoro for information on how things work, and I shared that information with the board last week. What I shared is that Cashton does not have a black and white metric. Superintendent Alderson stated that they, quote, the full administrative team meets at minimum weekly to discuss current levels of viral activity and associated quarantines in the buildings. We also monitor student absenteeism rates at 20 to 25%. As is the case in many districts, there is not a set in stone number. Decisions on whether to open or close this school district are intended to be in the best interest of students based on local conditions, end quote. Melrose Mindoro pretty much does the same thing. The first question they ask themselves is, are we seeing spread between students or between staff and students? At this point, Mr. Arts said they have not seen any spread at school that they are aware of. He said, quote, with all the protocols we have in place, we are confident school is a safe place, end quote. When I spoke to Mr. Arts on the phone, he mentioned that they have students coming from 3 different counties, La Crosse, Jackson, and Trempealeau. He also said, quote, am I nervous every day? Absolutely. But having kids here is more important, end quote. What I'd like to point out is that those superintendents have children attending in their district. Like another parent mentioned last week, not having kids in school is easier. Sending my child to another district is not an option, as with most working parents. So I will continue to fight for my child and others to get an in-person education. It's time to get on living safely. Shelley nailed it on the head last week. What are we waiting for? And how long can this go on? We need to get kids back in school. How? That's what's left up to all of you. Department of Health Services has put out a website that has up-to-date case numbers for each district. Today, we are at 3.86. There are districts in session with much higher case rates than Bangor. Back when you initially approved the plan, we didn't include Monroe County. But now we can include it, but not compare to Cashton. We were specifically going to go by a plan that was as presented, and that changed immediately. Another couple weeks time, population and case metric changed. The population we're using is still 3,500 people more than the actual amount of people that live in our district. It's been made clear that we don't want to come back to school. So can we really trust that what's going on is best for the kids? Schools keep kids safe every day from neglect, abuse, and other terrible things. Keeping them safe from a virus is now just another part of everyday life. I know there are some staff and parents that think bringing back kids to school is unsafe. For them, they have the option to do CRVA. Staff also had that option. I sure hope that anyone that thinks it's unsafe to return is not going on vacation on winter break. But for those of us who want our kids in school, we did not choose virtual. This is another form of child neglect. Ending, I want to thank the expert, Dr. Worsing. Your expertise and knowledge is not going unnoticed by parents. We appreciate your input. I'd also like to thank those of you who voted in favor of starting activities. Those students who spoke didn't hit home with you, you're maybe in the wrong position. This is about the kids, and I hope you keep that in mind when discussing tonight's agenda item.
Thank you, Mandy. John?
Next is Matt Regan.
Hi, Matt. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
You can start whenever you're ready.
All right. Good evening. My name is Matt Regan, and I've been a middle school science teacher here in Bangor for the last 4 years. My wife, Julie, is also a teacher who has been in the district for more than 20 years and currently teaches 3rd grade at Bangor Elementary School. In addition, we open and enroll our 2 children in the Bangor School District and currently have them enrolled in the CRVA. Since this pandemic started, it has been a daily source of frustration, stress, and anxiety as it has impacted our lives as both parents and teachers. As you prepare to discuss the metrics being used by the Bangor School District, I wanted to reach out to you with my thoughts and concerns. First and foremost, the current COVID-19 pandemic is a public health emergency with high levels of positive cases and deaths locally, statewide, and nationally. While I am not naive to the facts that different modes of instruction take a toll on the mental health of our students, the financial well-being of our families, and food insecurities for others in our district, I believe the #1 priority at this point has to be the physical health and safety of our students, staff, and community. The current situation, as difficult as it may be, is not a public education emergency. Whether in person, hybrid, or virtual, students continue to receive educational services. Although the methods of instruction, interactions, and assessment are different during each different mode of learning and different from a normal school year, students are continuing to learn and many are making growth towards educational goals. As you make these incredibly difficult and important decisions, I ask that you are guided by the science and the recommendation of public health professionals. Scientists are professionals with advanced degrees and in some cases are working to apply their knowledge to benefit the health of people around the world. Public health professionals are experts who are working to develop policies focused on the prevention of disease. Almost daily, there are new videos being posted by doctors, nurses, and other frontline workers pleading with people to stay home to help stop the spread of this disease. These are the people we should listen to. The science and public health professionals are clear about what they recommend if we listen to them completely and in context. We need to move beyond the flashy headlines and sound bites and read and listen thoroughly and think critically. I know that when you Google CDC and opening schools, the results will show headlines like CDC director pushes back on schools closing amid the pandemic. And if you go to the CDC website, you can find the words, "It is critical for schools to open as quickly as possible for in-person learning." But if you continue to listen to the news stories or read the articles and websites in their entirety, they clearly state that the success in preventing and introducing and the transmission of COVID-19 in schools is connected to and dependent upon preventing transmission in communities. This is also what the AAP reports and recommends. The Bangor community is not currently doing this. I've also read the headlines where Dr. Fauci says, open the schools, and open schools should be the default position. But if you watch the whole interview or read the entire transcript, he goes on to say that the best way to ensure the safety of our children in school is to get the community level of the spread low. Again, the Bangor community is not currently doing this. As I watch previous board meetings about our current situation, I've heard people say that we are Bangor. We are not La Crosse, Onalaska, Holmen, or West Salem. Over and over, I hear people say, we are Bangor, with a sense of pride in our state championship teams, our WIAA scholar athletes, our music programs, our greenhouse, our students scoring above a 30 on the ACT or winning the Extra Effort Award. And for all the students we help graduate and send out into the world to be productive citizens. I'm proud to teach in Bangor and proudly wear my Bangor Pride or Bangor Strong shirts whenever I can and wherever I go. I've told Mr. Lane, Mr. Mullenberg, and my friends many times how proud, lucky, and happy I am to be a part of this school community. But if we're going to celebrate all the good, then we have to acknowledge and accept the difficult facts as well. If we proclaim we are Bangor, we are not La Crosse, Onalaska, Holmen, or West Salem, then here's what that also means. We are Bangor, a community that, according to the metrics from the CDC and the data collected by the La Crosse County Health Department, has had numbers of new cases that would put us in a category of higher or highest risk of transmission in schools in 10 out of the last 14 weeks, including the last 8 straight. We are Bangor, part of a community that, according to another CDC metric and more data collected by La Crosse County, has had a percent of positive COVID cases that would put us in the highest risk of transmission in the schools in 13 out of the last 14 weeks, and again, the last 8 straight. We are Bangor, a community which as of today has the highest new daily case rate of any municipality in La Crosse County over the last 7 days. These are the scientific facts, not my opinion, not what I believe, and definitely not what I want. As we listen to these facts, we need to realize the hard truth. Now more than ever, we need to be guided by the science, and we need to listen to the public health professional recommendations. If we want schools to open, this isn't about changing the metrics or completely ignoring them. This is about changing behaviors to decrease the rate of spread in our community. Our current metrics, though they may not be perfect, are currently doing what they were intended to do. They are keeping the students and staff safe while the COVID-19 pandemic carries on in Bangor, our county, our state, and our nation. As I finish, I want to remind parents of what the teachers in this district work to teach your children every day. Be respectful, responsible, productive, and safe. Don't post disrespectful and irresponsible comments on social media because you're upset about what someone said tonight. Be kind. We're all doing our best. Have productive conversations with your children, families, friends, teachers, and administration about the current conditions in our school, our community, and our state. And most importantly, be safe. Be socially distant, wear a mask, and wash your hands. To the school board, administrators, parents, and my fellow teachers, thank you for your effort and hard work during these difficult times. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt.
you, Matt.
Okay, TC Allen is next. TC, you there? Looks like he's connected. He just needs to unmute his mic. Okay.
There we go. It took me a second. Sorry about that. My iPhone is giving me some technical difficulties.
Hi, TC. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone.
Go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right. First of all, I have to give props out to the teachers, the administrative staff, everything that you guys are doing. I know you're going to hear a bunch of negative tonight, back and forth. I understand that. However, what the teachers have done truly is outstanding. However, we have to focus on the gap in education. We are doing everything that we possibly can as parents to teach out here. You are the experts. You are. You're the reason you're the teachers. We are the parents. We get that. I understand that aspect. Now going into this, I work with the CDC on a daily basis. I understand the statistics. It's much like my daughter at 5 years old and I have rebuilt 2 vehicles in 3 years. At 5 years old, my daughter can probably read a manual better than I can. Just like these statistics. You can look at them whatever which way you want to look at them. You can read them how you want to read them. You can give your gray area here and there. I'm not going to go through a bunch of statistics. I'm going to be honest. Homeschooling. We have to look at our kids every day with tears in their eyes. Some of us, not all of us. I'm not saying it's all that way, but we have days like that where you have to explain why they're not going to school and why it's difficult to learn here and learn there. We continue to push on, many of us as parents in the community. We're doing everything that we possibly can for our kids. We need your help. We know that you're doing everything you can virtually, but we need to be in person. There's a gap in education that is going to hurt these kids later on. There's both sides to it. I've done the research. I've heard both sides, and this is my opinion. But I definitely appreciate everything you guys are doing out there. But the mental challenges that our kids are facing right now, that's something we really need to focus on. And I know that we're trying the best we can, but the 4 classes a day at the 2 hours of class time, and then everything else that the parents are doing on our time and our kids' time, it's still a challenge. You are the experts. But with all that being said, I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything you're doing. We need to get our kids back. We need to figure out a safe way. The reason I brought up the reason my daughter's helped me build 2 vehicles in 3 years, she's in a shop with a welder, a grinder, chemicals. I've kept my daughter safe. I haven't kept her out of the shop. I've taught her how to be safe in the shop and how to keep her as safe as I possibly can. She still has dangers. I get that. And I take that chance because I want my daughter to learn. Just think about that. School's the same way. This world is not a safe world. We can only give our kids the best tools that we can and teach them the best we can to keep them safe. I know you're all doing your part. Please keep it up, but please, please think about getting our kids back in school. We need that. All of us in this community. I'm just going to speak for myself. I guess I know from my valley, we need to get back into school. We're struggling out here, and we don't have people that we can just call in to watch our kids and do this and that where we got to work or we got to run. So I appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for taking the time with me.
Thank you.
Stacy.
Okay. Okay, next is Denise and Alexandra Meyer.
Denise?
Hello, can you hear
Hi,
me?
Denise. Hello, welcome.
Hello. Hi. So I know I've spoken several times before, and I'm not going to go over a bunch of statistics. I may mention just a couple, but I just want, as you're making this decision, which I hope, you make a decision to change our mode of or our metrics that we're looking at to be just within the school buildings, such as Cashton, Melrose, Mindoro, other schools that have been doing this successfully. Because I feel strongly that in-person school is extremely important. My husband, I think I've said this before, he works in construction. He doesn't have a choice. He has to go to work every day. They're doing a ton of mitigation on the job sites. They're wearing masks, even though that's really difficult when you're climbing a ladder and doing construction work. They're cleaning constantly with the little cleaning gun things. They're, trying to do their best to social distance as much as they possibly can. And they're doing this successfully. None of these construction sites he's been on has been shut down completely because of too many COVID cases. I'm saying they haven't had any COVID cases, because they have. But at the same time, they've been working the entire 10 months in person successfully. I know I've mentioned before as well that these kids aren't staying home. The fact that they're not in safe activities where there's masking, social distancing, cleaning, and things that are, supervised by adults, they're going and doing a lot of things that aren't safe in that manner. So we're not stopping community spread by not having school. We're not even slowing it. I would venture to guess that if we have safe activities for our kids and in-person school, that would do more to slow community spread than not having it. Another point is that for kids, especially, the number 2 cause of death for a little bit older age range of kids, obviously not the youngest, is suicide. What we're subjecting our kids to is cruel and unusual. They are not at a high risk for this virus. Yes, there is risk involved. There is risk involved every day with all sorts of different viruses, car accidents, any kind of accident, all of these risks that we live with every single day and have for years. Smoking is not banned, and that kills even an estimated 400 and some thousand people a year. Is it an immediate death within a couple of weeks of starting to smoke? No, but it's the same thing, and we don't ban that. So school is not something that causes death, but not having these things in our kids' lives is contributing to a lot of other things that can cause premature death. Couple other things I just want to mention from a parent perspective. When you have 2 full-time working parents, and luckily I have older children, but I can't imagine the financial hardship of having to have daycare constantly because there's no school in session. That's a huge burden on families that I feel is unnecessary. And that's another point. These kids are going to daycare. They're going somewhere else. They're not just staying home and stopping community spread. It would be much better to have them in the school building and actually learning rather than just going to a daycare every day. Not that daycares aren't valuable and don't teach things, but it's certainly not the same. Myself, I ended up enrolling my 9-year-old into St. Paul's in Bangor, and they've been going in person with no problem whatsoever the whole time. I'm very glad I did that. That's made my life as a parent easier. And his attitude is so much better now that he's back in a routine at school, at home. He's learning more. He's doing, he's doing really well with the in-person school and in much better mood as well, compared to my two who are not in person. They're mad at me because I just called them out on their attitude. So yes, I have concerns about mental health for children. I know that private school is not an option for everyone in the community. It is a cost. There's a cost to that, and not everybody can afford it. And I know it is a hard decision, and it's a lot of work, even on like the job sites or in, you know, I have friends that work in factories and they have to do a lot of these measures. They have to do social distancing and masking, and it is a lot more work. I'm sure as a community, we're willing to help. Like, I would be willing to take days off of work and come in and volunteer to help with some of these things, if that would be an option. I know it's going to be a lot more work, but I think we need to think outside of the box, maybe get parent volunteers to help. I don't know, but we need to make this work for our kids, because right now, I know for a fact, my two that are in virtual are not getting the quality education they normally get at Bangor. I have large concerns about my daughter and, you know, having to be ready for college in not very long. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. Yeah, and I know that there's, you know, the numbers around here actually have been dropping amazingly after Thanksgiving, which is great. But at the same time, I think the Harvard model, from what I've heard, is adjusting, like Mandy said, and they're going to go with, you know, a larger possible community spread. But in my opinion, we should just go with what's going on in the school building, like we would during a flu season. If there's, what is it, more than 20 or 30% of the kids out with the flu or out, then we would have to shut down school, right? So I know it's not going to be easy, but I can tell you it's probably worth it. From what, you know, the other schools that are doing this, I don't think they would say they regret doing it and that they wish they would have just went virtual this entire time. I thank you guys for taking the time to consider a new model and to get our kids back in person. I think it's essential. I mean, more essential than construction work, in my opinion. So thank you for considering a new model. And I look forward to what you vote on, and I look forward to getting our kids back into in-person quality school. And here is Alex. Do you need me to hold it?
Yeah, I was in
You can sit.
Okay. Hi. So virtual learning isn't working for me as well as like in school was. I was doing pretty good in school, I would say, and now I'm not learning as much as I would, or like as fast as I would right now. And that's making me worried for my future in education. I want to go to college for 4 years, and I'm concerned that I won't even be prepared for my ACT. I also miss the social aspect in school, and I just like miss seeing people, and it's really just hard on my mental health and everything. And given all that, I would really appreciate if you would consider putting us all back into school. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Andy Liga is up next.
Andy?
Here I am.
Hi, Andy. Welcome. Start whenever you're ready.
All right. Well, thank you. I apologize if I get a little redundant because I didn't watch the other YouTube videos. So I'll just give you what I have to say and sign off. But first, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to this important decision. Back in September, you were charged with the responsibility of choosing a metrics that would be used to determine the mode of instruction. After careful consideration, you chose the Harvard Global Institute because it was science-based, it was a moderate model, and it seemed to fit our needs as a school district. I believe that your decision to rely on the Harvard model was motivated by the fact that one of your responsibilities as a board member is to ensure the safety and well-being of the students and staff. What has changed? The science is still the same. Have your motives changed? I hope not. Your decision should be driven by the need to keep students and staff safe, and not just them, their families as well. This school is not a bubble. Some may argue that virtual instruction is not healthy for kids. I would argue neither is COVID. And so would the 418,000 people of Wisconsin with COVID. And so would the families of the 3,806 people that have died because of COVID. And so would the overwhelmed healthcare system. Your decision on the appropriate metrics to use should be driven by science and the recommendations for health from healthcare experts, not personal agendas. I'm sure you are aware that your decision may have serious ramifications on the students, staff, and their families. The metrics of the Harvard model were chosen and modified to best fit this school and community to attempt to keep us safe. I see no valid argument as to why that decision should be changed. As a teacher, I want to be back in school. I want to be face-to-face again, but I also want to be safe. I also believe that if we follow the guidelines established by the healthcare experts and we adhere to the metrics of the Harvard model, we will actually be back face-to-face sooner and will be able to sustain face-to-face instruction longer than if you ignore these recommendations. Ignoring the science will not make COVID go away. That's all I got. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Andy.
Okay, there was a couple other people on the list for tonight, but they're not in the waiting room. So Julie, I guess I'll leave it up to you then.
Okay, well,
This is Jack. Greg Mitchick asked me to read something because he couldn't be here tonight.
okay, go ahead, Jack.
Says, I don't think I'm going to partake in the public comments portion of the meeting tonight, as I will be working at my primary job to get my required hours in for the week. I guess I should consider myself lucky that I have the option to work flexible hours where I'm not sure all individuals do. It makes for some very long days, though. I'm sure that remote learning has impacted many families in the district financially and caused them to make some tough decisions. I hope that the letter I sent to all of the school board members last week was enough to make some of them think about how remote learning is affecting the district's families and consider that as well as their decision tonight. And he had to work because during the day, he has to flex his time so he can help with the schoolwork for his kids. So he wanted to read it himself, but he couldn't because he had to flex his hours. So he just wanted that read.
Thank you. Anyone in the waiting room now, John?
No, there is not.
Okay. Then I guess we shall proceed. So on next, thank you everyone for your public comments. Okay, so next on the agenda, area schools mode of learning decision models.
Thanks, Julie. In your packet on page 4, you will find that list. And at the last meeting, the board directed us to find out what area schools were doing in terms of their models. And so, first of all, I want to say thank you to Josh Chaplin, our school psychologist, for putting a lot of research into this. So on that document, you will find, in addition to the 26 CESA 4 schools, 20 other schools that are to our south and to our north. And the counties vary, obviously, from La Crosse to Jackson to Trempealeau, Pepin, so again, Josh did a great job of doing a lot of research on that. So first of all, I guess I want to talk about the CESA 4 schools. Again, there's 26 in our CESA. And out of that group, there are 6 that follow the Harvard model, 1 that follows the Minnesota SAFE model, which we will talk about in a bit, 1 the CDC model, 6 follow county recommendations, and 12 follow district or mitigation efforts that they're making within the district. The other schools, the other 20 schools, are a mixture of county. A couple of them use also the Minnesota SAFE program, and then district or within district mitigation. So you can see from that list, there's a lot of variation. And so when we talk about it, I guess everybody wishes there was a standard template that we could all follow, and that would make all of our kids and schools safe, or staff safe, but that's just not the case. And so districts and their boards have chosen different types of models to guide them in their work since the school started. And again, one district that could be down the road from the other may have a different model. And again, they have chosen what they think is best for them. And so I know in talking to our La Crosse schools and talking to our Scenic Bluff schools, again, there's variation, and all of us have had different success going from virtual to in-person to hybrid. And again, it varies from not only county to county, but school to school. So even if you look at our Scenic Bluffs, currently there are schools that are in different modes. Yes, there are a number of them that are in person, but there's a district that's fully virtual now through the beginning of January. One of the districts has their high school, 712, is hybrid, and it's been for the last 4 weeks, even though they started out in person. Their elementary has stayed in person. So again, I know that the thing of comparing districts, and we certainly can learn from each other, but our districts definitely vary in terms of model and what they're using. And then the other column that I just want to point out is Josh, when he did his research, that what their current mode of learning was as of December 3rd. And you can see in front of you, again, it's a very mixed bag with out of the 46 schools, 26 were either in person or offering some virtual option, but then 20 schools were completely virtual, and because of the situations either in their county or in their individual school district. So I wanted to just basically give a summation and then see if there are any questions. And again, Josh, I know, is on the call too, and Josh did all the work behind this. So I don't know, Josh, do you want to add anything at all?
No, I just, if there's questions, I can field those, I guess.
Any questions for Mr. Chaplin? Or Mr. Lane? Okay. Next item, National Regional Mode of Learning Decision Models.
Okay, thanks, Julie. Again, the board directed the administration to look at some different models than the current Harvard model that we're using. So again, doing the research, and again, I have to give all the credit to Josh for this, spent a lot of time looking at this. So the most common ones that we found, at least in our area and our region, were the Harvard model and the Minnesota SAFE model and the CDC. So again, I'm just going to give a topical overview of each of those, and you will find in your packet more information on that, and I also sent you links. So the first one obviously is the most familiar to us, which is the Harvard model that we have been using. And as you know, it is predicated on colors, green, yellow, orange, and red, depending on the where the district or the particular municipality or county is at. And as you know, the La Crosse County Health Department adopted that model and then modified it to become the County Cooley Collaborative. And when they turned it to the Cooley County Collaborative, they included hospital metrics from Gunderson and Mayo to give, I guess, a more rounded picture of the model itself. And then, as you know, we further modified it to the municipal level, which we use as actually our primary metric. Now, a couple of the people that spoke on public comments did allude to the fact that there are new guidelines out, and the new guidelines do promote kids being in school, and and they do talk about the mental health issues and the importance of kids being in school. And I don't think that anybody is disagreeing with that. Those are out, and they were just released very, very recently, because the original ones were put out in July, and these just came out near the end of November. The other thing that we are waiting on, and we had some discussion as our La Crosse County superintendents today, very soon, there are going to come out, we believe, new metrics, which we hope will give us more clarification and again, from experts saying that at these levels of cases, it is safe to bring students back. So obviously, we are all waiting for that very anxiously. We're hoping in the next, 3 to 5 days, but sometimes that always doesn't happen. But those are supposed to be coming out, and hopefully they will help in addressing how to get kids back in school and how to do it safely.
Dave, these new metrics, they are coming from the Cooley Collaborative?
No, from the Harvard.
Harvard.
Yes,
so the new metrics are from the Harvard model.
Yes, and it will be interesting to see how those metrics match up with the Cooley, Collaborative. And
okay, all right, I misunderstood. Got it.
The next one was the Minnesota Safe Learning Plan, and again, that's in your packet, and I believe starts on page 12. And again, some of the districts in our region are using it. The difference in the Minnesota Safe Learning Plan is, instead of looking at the last 7 days, which we have used in the Harvard model, the Cooley Collaborative, this looks at the last 14 days of case rates and over the county population of 10,000. And so that gives you a rate that of the number of cases, and that drives the learning. So using that metric or that information, they have listed out that if that number is 0 to 9, it's in person for all students. If it's 10 to 19, it's in-person learning for elementary students, hybrid learning for secondary students. 20 to 29, hybrid learning for all students. 30 to 49, hybrid learning for elementary students, distance learning for secondary students. And if it's 50 or above, distance learning for all students. So again, it's another model that's based on science and metrics. Then the third one is the CDC model. And again, that can be found on page 10 and 11 in your packet. The CDC model uses 5 colors instead of 4. At the lowest level, dark green is the lowest level of transmission. Then they move to a green, which is lower transmission in schools, to yellow, which is a moderate risk of transmission in schools, orange, which is a higher risk of transmissions in schools, and then red, which is the highest risk. And again, what they do is just like the Harvard model, they use new cases per 100,000. But here's the difference, they use 14 days. The other thing that they put in there, what they call their primary metrics, is the ability of school to implement the 5 key strategies, such as masking, physical distancing, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the national regional models. And then if we were to look at just an in-district model, that the research that I've seen And again, we would talk to other districts that are doing that if that's the way the board chooses to go. Obviously, you would look at the positive case numbers among students and staff would be one indicator. Your quarantine numbers among students and staff. Adequate staffing, which is very important, especially given our lack of subs. Just like most districts, we have very, very few subs. So that would be right at the top in terms of, if we can adequately staff for education. It would also look at absentee rates in classrooms and buildings. And again, would include mitigation factors because masking, cohorting, physical distancing, among others. What I wanted to say, the mitigation factors, obviously, we require masking pre-K through 12, and our students have been great on that. But the cohorting and physical distancing do vary. We are able to do the cohorting, physical distancing more easily in the elementary. The middle school, high school is a different scenario because the cohorting and the physical distancing is not as guaranteed as in the elementary. And again, this would be, especially the staffing would be a kind of on a day-to-day thing because, as I mentioned, we would be looking at our lack of subs because our list, while was not very big to begin with, and that's just the what it is in all districts. Everybody is shortage of subs even before COVID. But when COVID hit, not just in our district, other districts, the number of substitutes diminished greatly. So the staffing would be very much a day-to-day in the in-district models. So those are the models that we found, that we researched. So again, I'm going to ask Josh if, he did a lot of this work. If there was, Josh, anything that I missed that you felt was important on those models?
No, I think you covered them pretty well. And just remember the Minnesota Safe one is the population per 10,000. And their model is a county-based population model. But obviously, if you wanted to change that to fit the municipality, you could do that. And it would be in the per 10,000 versus the 100,000 range as well. So, and like Dave said, the biggest difference on the CDC one would be the over the 14 days, not just the 7, as well as, again, the mitigation procedures that you can implement also goes along with the different colors.
Did anyone have a chance to put our numbers into these other 2 models to see if it really made any difference?
Last week when I did it on the Minnesota Safe one, we were right at 50. And I believe this week there are more cases than last week. So we would be over the 50 in the Minnesota Safe model. And then the CDC one, I believe we would be in orange.
Any other questions? Good question, Joni. Any other questions for Mr. Lane, Mr. Chaplin? Okay, moving on to the next agenda item. School nurse and administration recommendations for mode of learning and return of students.
So Julie, we're going to kind of do a tag team type of thing here.
Okay.
What I'm going to ask first is, Mike and Rick and Tammy will all speak at some point here. But Mike did a lot of, I'll say, mathematical work with our municipal model. and specifically looking at case numbers. And the purpose was to talk about with those case numbers, the numbers of cases in our municipalities, and then at what point does it come into the schools, and then what do we need to do in terms of a school to address, if we have positive cases, if we have quarantining, those types of things. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and I did send you that email that lists the math behind it, and then also had case numbers starting since September 30th up to December 9th. So Mike.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Really, it just came out of looking at the data available to us in La Crosse County and our municipalities. I think when the board asked us to look at the municipalities a little closer earlier in the process, we did that, and I think that has helped us be more accurate. That doesn't take away the fact that we're trying to get kids back to school in a safe manner and keep our staff safe so they can actually do the teaching that is needed. So I was thinking through this process of data and how it has impacted our school to this point. And something that always really jumped out at me was when we were doing all the math to begin with back in September. I remember we were all sitting in the room and working on these things and calculating it out. And I remember thinking, this was back when the board was questioning whether we should move from 25 to 35 to 40 or 50 on the Harvard model, and West Salem had gone to 35. And it just really dawned on me that it didn't matter if we moved the number from 25, because we technically probably would never get there without it being in the school. And mathematically predicted that 14 cases in our municipalities would then put it in our schools. And on October 28th, when our numbers hit 14, it was the same day that we hit our first positive case in our school. And from there, the quarantines of staff and students that went from that place. So I always thought that the numbers and the science behind it, I think it does matter. I really do. I am not a medical professional. Been doing education for a very, very long time. So I rely on numbers, and I rely on the data that we can get, and it proved itself to the day, to the number. And so I decided that maybe I should take that idea into the entire district and kind of see what we can come up with in terms of what is in my opinion, our risk factor based on what's going on in our municipality. So I started scratching off the schools into really 4 different categories: a 4K to 2 category, a 3 to 5 category, a 6 to 8 category, and a grades 9 through 12 category. And I started putting those numbers of students and staff into this equation to try to figure out what it would mean if the elementary was back in school, K2, and then what it would mean if it was K5, 4K5, sorry. And then as well as then the high school, middle school at a hybrid model, and as well as a full in-person model, and what that would take. Based on our numbers today of 33 cases in our municipalities, if we had 14 cases in our municipalities and we had positive cases within our school, I think everybody agrees that if we put all 600 and I guess it's not 600, 579 students back in our building from day one, I think everybody agrees COVID would be within our building. From that moment, we would be contact tracing. And from that moment, we would be quarantining and, separating out students and staff, that kind of thing. So I started backtracking on that, saying, hey, that doesn't seem like a great idea to just pull everybody back in at one time. Too many students in one small place. Elementary is different because we can control things a lot better than the middle high school can, just based on numbers and how students move. But nonetheless, what we found was the busing of students was really the crux of the matter in terms of when the quarantining really took off and the numbers just ballooned like crazy. So I started backtracking from the municipal data to what is a risk within our building, and started looking at that more closely. And I shared the numbers with Dave, who shared them with you, I believe. And then, so you look at, the 143 students that we have for K to 2, plus all 37 staff in our building. And you start putting that together as really 180 people in the elementary school. And if you take that over our municipalities of 8,963, it would take somewhere around that 49 cases in our community to close our 4K5 or 4K2 classrooms down. Like theoretically, you would then find its way into the school. So I was like, okay, maybe we're onto something in terms of just a ratcheted approach to pulling our least independent learners is our 4K2. Those are the students that I've been most concerned about for forever. They are the least independent. They are, as far as the parent responsibility to connecting those assignments and tasks, and I thank the parents for their efforts, because I see a lot of the products that the parents are helping with and that sort of thing, and I know it's draining on everybody. So, that's just, I started going with that model a little bit more and started doing the math on it. There's 94 students in 3 through 5. Again, the 37 staff members don't really change because that's the whole deal. So you would pull together then 274 elementary students to staff, and if you had a number, you could predict that a number of 32 in our municipalities would put it into our school. And so on all the way down to elementary, all elementary back, middle high school staff, and middle school at a hybrid. 22 cases in our municipality would find its way into our schools. Elementary, all elementary, middle school, high school staff, as well as middle and high school at a hybrid model, you would expect it to be in the schools around 18 cases in our municipalities. All elementary and all middle school students, high school would be hybrid. About 15 cases you would expect it to be in our 15 cases in our municipalities, you would expect it to be in our school. And if you brought all of our students back, all staff back at 662 people, you would predict that at 13 cases in our community, it would find its way into our school. So I guess the question it has to be is, how can we ratchet it backwards from where we're at today with 33 cases? Yeah, that would allow our 4K to 5 or 4K to 2 students to come back to school, along with our staff, to work on those students of the most highest need. But as of right now, it would probably not be beneficial to bring 3 through 5 back at this time because of the cause of getting into the school. I think it's most important to keep our staff and students safe, and moving forward is to keep the virus out of the school, or do our best to do that. Once it's in our school, the quarantines cause major challenges. I do think that the model that this municipality model that it kind of put together really puts the onus back on our community. And I hope it would, in a way, bring us together to say, you know what, if we really want our kids back in school, then let's do what we can over the next X number of weeks to get this number down to a manageable number. It's not impossible. We just have to work at it collectively instead of divisively, like you can see it's happening in our community. So, if we put our minds to it and we say, you know what, this is based on community. For months, I've been hearing how we're not La Crosse. Why are we including those numbers? We're not Monroe County. Why are we including those numbers? Well, they do have a direct impact on who we are and where we live. Whatever you say, you can say it however you want to. If you interact with La Crosse County, Monroe County, it impacts what we do. And you can get this virus anywhere. You can. Even the people people have made statements saying, our lives as adults have not changed, but nobody's speaking for me, and my life is drastically changed. I feel like my wife and I and my sons are doing what we can to mitigate our own family from this crisis. I haven't seen my extended family for months, almost a year now. And I think that as a community, we can do this and really look at the numbers and say, look, in our community, we have this number of cases. If we want kids to be back in school, then maybe we as a community can control it, because we need to keep it out of the school. We need to keep the teachers here working for straight long distances of time, for long periods of time so we can move the needle on learning. If we just keep passing it off as it's an inconvenience or whatever else, it is for everybody. Nobody likes this. But I think this plan brings our most needed, our youngest learners, our least independent learners priority to getting them back into school. Our elementary can do things differently than a middle high school. But if you have questions about the plan, please ask away.
Mike, I have a question.
Sure.
So in your 4K through 2 model that you talked about, you said 37 staff. Do we really have 37 staff for just those age groups?
No, that's a whole elementary.
That's the whole elementary. So how many
Yeah,
staff would it be?
I figured if staff were back in the building, all staff would be back in the building.
Okay.
So
you are going off the premise that if we, even though you maybe bring 4K through 2 students back, you would still bring all teaching staff back.
that was what I was thinking at the time.
Saying?
That's what I
Okay.
was saying.
Okay. All right. I just wanted clarification on that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Johnson?
So this is just more or less an addendum to our current model or metric, correct? Not an entirely new.
Agreed.
Okay.
I think it's less, I think it's more scaffolded. That makes sense.
It does.
Joni, and what the way we've been reporting it previously under the municipal model was a daily average. This moves it to the case numbers in our municipalities, the total case numbers.
So we are obviously then really relying on the county and reporting the numbers, which I guess that's all we've had in the past anyway, but.
Correct. Any other questions for Mike?
And the case numbers are still, or would still be on a Wednesday, not a different day of the week. Is that correct?
That's when they update them, Lori, is every
Okay.
Wednesday.
Okay.
And I should say that most times they're done by Wednesday. Once in a while, if there's very honestly a lot of testing cases going on. For example, a couple of weeks ago, I believe they didn't have it until Thursday morning. And I'm talking about the map of the municipality. So at the latest Thursday morning.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. Who's next? Tammy, Mr. Mullenberg?
I can go. So I have mine typed out. I'm not a speaker like Mr. Johnson. The weekly data sent out by the local health department is accurate and it does matter. It is part of the big picture, but it is not the whole picture. It does not show how public health is being overburdened, how our hospitals are being overwhelmed, or how schools are trying to navigate with both support and ridicule. I am asking the board, please do not disregard public health recommendations or disregard the level of spread in our community when making decisions about returning to school. Numbers and science matter. COVID is a community problem and it has disrupted lives. We need to trust and listen to our medical experts. The case rate was trending downward, which was a good thing to see. But now cases are up again in our school district. Our county health department is still overburdened and we do not need to add to it. We likely have not seen the full effects of Thanksgiving, and there are talks about another surge upon a surge of cases that we are already experiencing that won't happen until after Christmas. Comments have been made that COVID isn't as bad as the flu. Per Wisconsin DHS, Wisconsin had 36,175 flu cases and 183 deaths reported in 2019 to 2020. As of yesterday, there have already been 418,446 cases of COVID, and 3,806 COVID deaths in Wisconsin. Per the CDC, there were 22,000 flu deaths in the nation during 2019 to 2020. And as of yesterday, there have been 14,823,129 COVID cases and 282,785 COVID deaths this year alone. COVID is not the flu. I am standing on middle ground here, and I can see and appreciate all arguments about what we should or should not do. Most of us agree kids need to be in school, face-to-face and full-time. But we are in a pandemic, a global crisis, and Bangor is not exempt. We are not trying to keep kids out of school, and we are not living in fear. Personally, I will do what I need to do, whether there's in-person learning or whether we are practicing a virtual model, because I am an essential worker. I trust our admin team and our school board to make those decisions. We have infection control practices in place, and I trust that they do work if they are followed, but we cannot ignore the high level of spread in our community. And a couple of things that I wanted to mention when we were in person. 2 middle school cases sent 50 kids into quarantine because of cohorting and the busing situation. 1 positive case while in hybrid learning, 3 close contacts were identified and sent home to quarantine. So you can see that the hybrid mode of learning keeps our 6 through 12 in school when our cases are high. And I believe that was when we were around 14 cases in our community. Because of those 2 examples, I strongly encourage following a hybrid model for grades 6 through 12 when there's significant spread of COVID in our communities, if you're not going to use the Harvard model. In my opinion, keeping small class sizes for these grade levels will help us to be successful in keeping students in school consistently. Per the American Academy of Pediatrics, the goal of having children attend school in person, which is how they learn best, is only safe when a community has spread of the virus under control. And then when it is possible to open a school for in-person learning, a layered approach is needed to keep students, staff, and teachers safe. So I ask you, is the spread of the virus in our community under control? None of the students that were sent home to quarantine no symptoms were ever reported to me, which means our interventions do work. But I remind you that this was only a couple of occurrences. And I do know that our interventions have prevented COVID positive people from ever entering our schools. The elementary school was highly successful with in-person learning with all students attending. Like I said before, most quarantines happened due to not being able to socially distance on the buses and when cohorting and not being able to physically distance. So I remind parents that when your child rides a bus or attends school, there is always a level of risk for being exposed to COVID. The parents, I think, did a great job of keeping their kids home when they were sick or considered a close contact when we had in-person instruction. Children with COVID are far less likely to have severe symptoms than adults, per the CDC. But the part that keeps getting left out is that the virus then spreads in our community to others who may have more complications. It can spread to people such as your coaches, teachers, your family members, your grandparents, to those caring for our most vulnerable community members in the nursing home, to our neighbors, to our friends, or to the student who does have a pre-existing condition. COVID does not discriminate. For some, it might feel like a mild cold or flu, but for others, it does cause chronic issues or death. Some of us have changed our behaviors since this past March, and some have not. Remember that personal behavior has a trickle effect and impacts spread in our community. If the county recommendations are followed, we are slowing the spread. I will continue to encourage parents to keep their kids home when meeting the conditions for exclusion and encourage testing. Per the DHS, the exclusion rules are conservative for a reason. They mitigate spread of COVID among staff and students internally, which decreases risk of spread into the community. Newer studies do show that spread of COVID in school is low as compared to spread within the community. Personal gatherings with non-household members continues to be the #1 reason of spread of COVID. Please stay home except for essentials so we can get our kids back to school. Our federal and state governments have put us in an absolutely horrible situation. There is no continuity in how decisions are being made across our county, state, or nation. Decisions are being made that are not based on science, and the inconsistencies of these decisions have caused division and discord in our communities. It has brought up countless times that Caston is doing this, Sparta is doing that, or West Salem is doing this. How come this school gets to play sports and how come we don't? And I get it, there is no easy or right answer. Our admin and school board are working hard and they do have the best interests of all students in mind. And to the staff, I cannot say enough about what a remarkable job you have done with implementing our practices and balancing a back and forth approach to the different modes of learning. Your efforts do not go unnoticed and our students are lucky to have you. I can see the toll this has taken on those in our schools and community. I support getting the kids back to school, starting sports and other extracurriculars, but we need to do that safely and take virus activity in our community into account. None of us can deny that the spread of COVID is really high right now. Please wear your mask, practice social distancing, wash your hands, and stay home except for essentials. The behaviors of our community members determine the trends. What you do will determine the trends. Ask yourself if you are doing all that you can do to stop the spread of COVID. Are you doing everything you can do to keep our kids and our community safe? We all have a personal responsibility here, and I believe we can all do better. That's all I have.
Thank you, Tammy.
Julie, next, I'd like to have Rick talk about the middle school, high school, and his thoughts on bringing kids back. Rick?
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Dave. A lot of the points that I had, Mike and Tammy kind of touched upon as well. There's no doubt, like every teacher that talked tonight and administrator, we want the kids back. I mean, that's what we signed up to do. And we want them back. We want them back safely. You know, the middle high school is a little bit different animal in the fact that we have a lot of electives and things and kids mix. And so as Tammy alluded to or said, the hybrid model probably is something when we come back that we would stick with a little bit longer so we could keep those class sizes smaller. The elementary school was doing well for 5 weeks until there were cases in the middle school and the contact tracing on the buses took some of those kids out. So the elementary did a fantastic job. There weren't cases there. That first week when we did hit 14, you know, going back to Mike's numbers a little bit, we had 4 students positive and 2 staff. So I think there is, you know, obviously there's some truth to like Mike's math that he has in there. Our middle school, we do cohort about 90% of the time, so we can definitely minimize some of the risk there. We've gone to the block scheduling, so we're not as much movement throughout the day. But you know, just inherent with the amount of movement in those schools, there is a little bit more risk involved. So that's why the smaller class sizes are definitely better. The case rate that went to 14 was from October 28th, which was the prior week, and it was October 26th to the 30th where we ended up with those cases. I just kind of want to go back to that, but we ended up quarantining 60% of one grade due to 2 positive cases, as Tammy said. It was a hectic day, but I think the measures that we had in place, like Tammy said, worked well because there was not spread. And that's a positive sign. You know, we're trying to look back on the data that we have from when we had students there, what worked well. The staff did a great job of sanitizing in between all classes, and our custodial staff as well. We have a lot of good things in place. There's no question about that. And I feel confident in our staff with that. You know, it doesn't eliminate risk, but I think it definitely mitigates it the best that we possibly can. So just to kind of reiterate what Tammy was saying, I think that hybrid at the middle school, when that happens, unless the case rate is extremely low, is more of a way to go than bringing more of those students back. 14 is less than half of what we are currently. So going by if you go off of what Mike had, it would not have the middle and high school in there. But I think that's a pathway to get our kids back here more quickly, like he said, and I'm definitely in favor of something like that. Thank you.
Tammy, I'm sorry, I didn't ask. Are there any questions for Tammy?
Tammy, we talked, I don't remember, last week or this week. Did you get a response from the health department about reporting to you those cases, or if we have to take it directly from the source?
They responded shortly after I had emailed them after the last meeting, and they said that they are working on getting better about doing that. It's not currently something that they do. So they were going through the process of adding that. So they would be able to contact us so when I do contact tracing, I basically send them, it's called a line, a contact tracing line. I send that to them, and then so they're informed on our part of a positive case in the school. But I told them that I wasn't being contacted if there was positive cases we didn't know about, and so they were going to work on that. And I still haven't been informed of any cases since then. And I'm not saying that there were any. I will say, you know, I'm sure you received the email. We did have another positive case in the school today with just the special ed and the kiddos that come in to use the computers. So.
Any other questions for Tammy? Any questions for Mr. Mullenberg?
Hey, Julie, can I interrupt 1 second?
Sure. Yes, of course.
I think when Dr. Warsing speaks, so the kids that did start sports, I know this is kind of off topic. So there is recommendation by the WIAA that athletes that have had COVID should be cleared by their doctor to return to sports. And maybe Dr. Warsing can add a little bit to that, but she did, when I talked to her the other day, she did recommend that athletes that are, you know, have been COVID positive, they should be cleared by their MD before they may return. Because of the underlying cardiac conditions that may present. Just wanted to throw that out there so that I don't know if we need to mandate that or, you know, whatever you guys.
That's coming from the WIAA.
Yes.
It's also coming from the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Okay.
Specifically with some of the cardiology recommendations because of the potential for myocarditis post-COVID. The recommendation, the cases are moderate to severe if they fit certain criteria, that they should have some sort of cardiac evaluation, maybe just an EKG, maybe more, before they get cleared to go back to strenuous exercise. So specifically the sports. It's not necessarily with returning to gym class though, which did surprise me.
It's that continuous, rigorous activity. Yeah. I've read about that too. Okay.
So just throwing that out there.
No, well, thank you. I didn't know the WIA was making that recommendation. Okay. All right. Any questions for Mr. Mullenberg? Okay, Dave, back to you.
So I guess if there aren't any more questions, I want to lay out our administrative recommendation, and then the board can ask questions or discuss, what we're recommending. So our recommendation is to stay with our current model, but if you choose not to follow the Harvard model, we recommend on January 4th, bringing grades pre-K2 back due to their unique learning needs and follow the municipal model as presented by Mr. Johnson for grades 3 through 12, starting January 4th. So the recommendation, do you want me to read it again, Julie, or was that clear?
Read it again, please.
Okay. Our recommendation is to stay with our current model, but if you choose not to follow the Harvard model, we recommend on January 4th, bringing grades pre-K2 back due to their unique learning needs and follow the municipal model as presented by Mr. Johnson for grades 3 through 12, starting January 4th.
So to clarify, 3 through 12 would be?
It would be based on what the municipal model shows. So for example, Julie, again, following the Wednesday to Wednesday, so on December 30th, if the municipal model shows that our numbers are down, Mike talked about for all of the elementary to be back, approximately 32 cases. So if the model, the total cases in our municipalities would be 32 or below, then we could bring all of the elementary back. But
so we would base it on the municipalities and on his numbers. So it would not be, we would not decide totally 3 through 12. We could do 3 through 5 or 3 through 8 or,
yep.
I mean, right?
Yeah, based on the numbers.
Based on his numbers and his calculation. Okay.
Right. So for example, like if we were at 22 cases or 21, it's at that point, according to the math, we could bring all of the elementary back and the middle school students in a hybrid. So again, just depends, just as Mike said, if with, the plea to our community to follow, the guidelines, everything, we could bring kids back. But I do want to emphasize that, again, because of the unique learning needs, to bring pre-K2 back.
I guess to clarify that a little bit, Mike's numbers that he ran for the municipality models is those numbers were worked on by numbers off the Harvard model, correct? They correlate with the Harvard model numbers?
Shirley, I took the population, the 8963, the number we've been using for our municipalities, with our with just our population numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
And
it's population numbers from school.
Right. Right. Numbers that are in the building, but it is the numbers that are in. You're still basing it off the numbers in our municipality, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. 8963 was the number we've been using. Correct.
Right. Okay.
So I guess I understood that those numbers were going to be more of an addendum to the Harvard model. So now I am to understand that they are two totally separate things. We would be one or the other, or something really different.
Yeah, Joni, again, remember, in addition to the municipal model, and again, the municipal model that we've been using has been based on the daily case rate. And, but in addition, we've used the Cooley Collaborative numbers for case rate, positivity rate, close contact origin, and trend. And then we've also used the case rate in Monroe County. So if we were to stay with that. But if we were not to use those, Monroe County, La Crosse County, collaborative, then we would just be looking at the municipal numbers based on total cases in our municipalities.
And then we would be going week by week, just like we are now. I mean,
Yes, it would still be week to week. Again, I think the advantage, again, if we bring the pre-K2 back, you know, according to the numbers that Mike presented, we have, if you look on that, the sheet that Mike put together, you know, we said 49 total cases. We haven't in the weeks ever since we started using the municipal model reached. We did have November 11th of, you know, we reached 47 cases, but for the most part, we've had two on the November 18th, we had 39 cases, December 9th, 33. Otherwise, we're in the 20s. And then we did have, you know, the first 5 weeks, 11, 12, 3, 8, and 14. So it would give us a little more flexibility.
I do like the model that Mike did present. I'm very for bringing them littles back. Them have always been my biggest concern with, you know, especially the pre-K2 and their non-independence and stuff that way. What Mike presented, you know, the math shows it does make sense and things that way. I do like what he presented.
If I could just chime in a little bit too, I'd like to say that some of the science that is changing a little bit, some of the things that we're learning, for example, we keep hearing that kids don't transmit or they're not as likely to be sick. It's really those younger kids. So that fits very well with the model that Mike is talking about with getting those younger kids back. We're partially thinking that they don't transmit as much because they peak their virus load and then drop off very quickly. So they're not contagious as long. But when we get to the adolescent age, it looks like they might transmit just as much as adults. So I'd also like to back what Tammy said and what Rick has said about keeping the hybrid models with those older grades so that we can better cohort and distance the kids if they do come back to school.
Thank you, Dr. Worsing.
I guess, yeah, Mr. Regan had made comment to it and I wanted to mention it tonight as well that, you know, we're saying go by the experts, don't go or don't have a personal agenda and things that way that, you know, it has never been about a personal agenda. Dr. Anthony Fauci on Monday, CBS Evening News, his comment was the safest place for kids to be is in school. Granted, I did not hear the entire how many hour interview on that and things of that sort, but yes, they do not, the littles do not spread it as much. Talking with Melrose Mindoro and Cashton both, they have not had a spread. They've been live or in person for 3 months for the most part. They have not had a student to student case. They have had cases in their school, but it got brought in from outside. They have not had it transmitted from student to student. Talking with a couple of teachers in the Melrose Mindoro school with some age on them, older veteran teachers, and yeah, they were very scared returning back to school. They questioned, they wondered. Talking with them now, and their comments were they feel a lot safer in school with all the tools they have been given than they feel going to pick up groceries. I think our admin team and our custodial team have done a good job. Obviously, the first trial run with in-person went well in the elementary and things of that sort. I think we do have the tools and the supplies they need to keep them safe. And if there are any complaints, I have the utmost confidence that we would take care of that immediately and get them to in a safe spot.
Any other comments, discussion, thoughts?
Oh.
Dave, I don't know if you want to mention, last week, I believe our case count was 23 in the district, and today it was 33.
So should we propose, I don't know what we're going to propose, but if we go to the more, the secondary, the mathematical version, the case rate. So then we just use this as our threshold then. So if we start seeing cases rise and we're back to that 40 number, then that's when we pull and we're just going to use these metrics, period. So 49 is a magic number, 22 is a magic number, 18 is a magic number. So that's going to be basically our threshold. Obviously, if we have teachers out, we may have to be different, but that would be our primary metric then.
Right, yeah, so Joni, yeah, so as you said, 49, 32, 22, 18, 15, 13. Again, it wouldn't be a black and white number. So much would be, very honestly, depending on what we're dealing with inside the school. So, so if we're, handling and our quarantine cases are manageable, our staffing is in place, because I'll be honest, that's what scares me most is the staffing, because of our shortage of subs. So, it would be a number that guides us. It's not a black and white number. Mike, Rick, Tammy, and I would be discussing, okay, so let's say it's 32 or 33. Okay, what's happening in the school? What are we seeing? Is the staffing there to handle it? What's quarantine cases look like? So, it would be a discussion, obviously, but I think again, it's important for us to have some type of guidelines rather than and proactive guidelines, I guess. And I think this model gives us that if we don't stay with the Harvard model.
So I have a question. Are we managing this at all by building? So what I'm saying is, let's say for whatever reason, and this is hypothetical, we have a spread of cases, let's just say in the 4K through 5 area. Are we still going to say then that we're not going to let the middle school or high school, let's say they don't have as many cases, we would not let them come back because of the spread in the elementary school, or vice versa?
I think, Lori, that it wouldn't be, a shutdown of the district. So, for example, let's say in the elementary that it may be a shutdown of a classroom. It may be a shutdown of a grade. It may be a shutdown of a building, but it wouldn't necessarily, if we were up here in hybrid and the numbers are manageable and we're not seeing spread and all that, we would break it down, building by building also.
Okay, because when I look at this, what I see is there's probably little to no hope for any middle school or high school kids if as a community we don't get this under control for them to ever have the possibility of coming back to school except for possibly 2 days a week for the rest of the year. Is that kind of, I mean, that theoretically, if the numbers don't improve, let's say from where they're at right now, if I'm a middle school or a high school student, if we're over 13, which we have been except for 4 weeks, if we're over 13, I'm not coming back to school. The best case for me is 2 days a week for the rest of the school year.
Well, I think, Lori, that if you look, you know, the first 5 weeks we were under, you know, in that 13 or below. So I would say two things. I'm hoping that, again, if this is the model that's adopted, that we will get cooperation from our community. And because I think, you know, we can bring those numbers down, but you know, the difficulty is because of the, you know, lack of cohorting, inability to cohort, and the physical distance, it is more difficult. So, but
Lori, I think too, to unconnect the buildings, you would have to address the transportation thing.
Right.
If you want to use Mike's model separated to the population numbers and separate those out, you'd have to separate the transportation piece. If you're thinking like, if you're
Yep. So with that said,
the 4K to 2 to middle school, you'd have to separate transportation piece.
But with that said, when you did the initial survey last fall, Dave, you said that we had a significant number of parents that were willing to bring their kids to school versus being on the bus. You know, as I don't want to say leverage, I don't think that's the right word, but as a compromise, if we could get more transportation from the parents, would that help us in the need to get the, I mean, is that a creative way for us to get more kids back to school and having, you know, we want to get them back, but we're going to need your help in the whole busing situation and having more parents get their kids to school. I know that's not theoretically 100% for all people that they can do that, but I'm just saying, is that something we need to consider?
I think that could be a huge goal for mitigation. However, you're right. Some people don't have that option with their work, but we can encourage it, I guess, as much as possible.
I think yes, and that's been brought up a lot, you know, in our admin discussions is, you know, I will say that, you know, because of the COVID concerns, the ridership when we were in session was less, but there still was buses of, you know, that had, you know, 30, 40 kids on it. So again, I think that can be definitely something that we can promote again. And because unless I can, you know, unless we can get more drivers, that's the difficulty. So I would encourage anybody, another plea, if we can get more drivers, we could look at adding a route or two, but we just don't have the drivers.
Dave, I mean, in a perfect world, say you've got this abundant amount of drivers. How many spare buses do we have? How many buses could we add to what our routes are?
We could, Shelley, add, and this is just off the top of my head, I believe we would have 4 more buses.
Really?
We could.
Wow.
Okay.
You know, we have talked about too, even, okay, do you stagger start times? But that in larger school districts, I know they do that, but for us, you know, that's so difficult when we're spread out the way we are. And so, you know, you go past the house that's up on Middle Ridge or out on, you know, Herman Cooley, you know, to, okay, at 7:30 and then again at 8:30. Again, I don't think it's just not feasible, like staggered start times or something like that.
Right.
So has the county said if you contact trace that every kid on a bus is considered contact tracing?
They told me that so wherever the positive individual is on a bus, you measure 6 feet around the kid, and generally it's 2 seats in front, 2 seats in back, the seats to the side. That so, like I said, with our 2 positive cases, it excluded almost 50 students between the cohorting in the classroom and then the bus exclusions.
So it's not the whole bus. And
It's not the whole bus, but it's pretty darn close to a third to about a third of the bus gets excluded.
But it's not whole, and it's not the whole class.
Nope. So what we do in the classroom is we measure 6 feet from the individual, and whoever was in the in their radius, then those individuals would be excluded.
So you're not having desks 6 feet apart? That's not a mitigation strategy that you're not using?
Well, in the middle school, we weren't able to physically distance. They were cohorted.
How many kids are in a middle school class? What's the average class size?
Rick, do you know that?
Yeah, depending on the grade, we have anywhere from 18 to 23 between the 3 grades.
And how big are your rooms?
If we take out all of the chairs and everything in there, or just leave the desks in there, we can physically distance about 18, and with a teacher desk in there, and leaving 6 feet for the teacher. And Mike Stang measured all that out for all of our classrooms.
But so some of them can.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be the whole class, everyone.
Right, correct.
Not all of the elementary are that same distance either, though.
Correct. The best we can do it's somewhere around that 5-foot range, not 6, 4.5. And that's probably, I think that's half the classrooms.
But then you're looking at 2 or 3 kids. I mean, depending on how, if your kid, it happens to be right in the middle, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4 kids, but it isn't the whole class.
No. Not typically, but certainly, Jack, that teachers move around all day long. So it's whoever was in, since the elementary, the kids are with the staff member all day, basically. That likelihood of being within close contact of 15 minutes is greater. There's no doubt about that, just because of the nature of the day.
Mm-hmm.
I just know I've been involved in contact tracing, and it's not as stringent as you're saying that it is. It's saying the 6 feet, but I just can't see how. I know the size of some of those rooms are big enough to hold 18, 20 kids. So it's just not every kid. I mean, we don't want it to happen, period, but I just like it's not the whole bus.
No, and Jack, that was when middle school was all face-to-face. That's why we're saying if they're hybrid, they can be spread out more, especially when our case numbers are that high. And in the same situation, we had a positive case in the high school, and they were hybrid, and it sent 3 close contacts home to quarantine versus 30. So I'm just trying to say that the hybrid is a better option when you're trying to keep kids in school versus sending them into quarantine.
Plain and simple, it all comes down to community. If the community wants the kids back in school, they need to do a better job, is what it comes down to in the end.
I would agree.
So I think I'm recommending that we make a decision tonight because You know, time is a factor, families planning is a factor.
Guess I don't want to cut anyone off from discussion. I want everyone to speak and stuff that way, I guess, but if there is no more discussion, I'll make a motion to adopt the municipalities model as our guidance for our mode of learning.
With, and Shelley, are you also adding on January 4th, pre-K through 2 and 3 to 12 based on the municipalities model?
Yes.
Okay.
But that would still depend on what the numbers were on January 4th, wouldn't it?
All the week before?
Yeah, December 30th.
The Wednesday before?
So I guess I just have, so are you saying that if, let's say it's at 55 on January 4th, we would not bring those 4K students back, or we will bring those 4K through 2 students back no matter what?
Good question.
Can someone project that so we can all see exactly what it is? Like, I think the people watching would like to see it. And I'm not even sure what page you're on of the packet, so. You could
It's not
just
in the
tell me
packet.
page. Okay, well, I think people would like to see it.
Yep, it was an email from today.
Okay, so I have the email, but I think
I agree.
in transparency, this is what people have been coming to us talking about, and we're talking about things that are not out there again. Like, this is what people want to see. So I think it would be nice if someone showed it.
If somebody has it on their computer, I can turn on the screen sharing.
Dave, are you able to do that?
Yeah, John, do I send it to you?
No, I'll just turn on sharing, and then you can do it yourself. Okay, Dave, you should have the option to share now.
Okay.
While we wait, Julie, I know you're looking for a motion and there's a motion on the table. My question would be, if we wouldn't be starting till January 4th and there's a new Harvard model coming out in the next 3 to 5 days, what is the rush of making the plan prior to our next board meeting? Is there a benefit either way, pros, cons? I mean,
That's a good question.
I know when we were waiting for when the county dropped their guidance and they were coming out with new guidance and they said it would be tomorrow. Tomorrow ended up turning into two. And we're waiting forever with no plan and no guidance. I'd rather have something in place. And then if something is there that is better, I mean, this is a fluid thing. To say that we made a decision in July and we have to stick with it now for the rest of our life is pretty blind. So, I mean, it's fluid, it's ever changing. You have new things coming out all the time. I would rather have something in place that we know we can work with.
It's moving forward in the direction of back to school.
Right.
Correct.
The other difficulty, Tina, would be, you know, as much as I'd like to say that it's supposed to come out in the next 3 to 5 days, you know, just like anything else, it could be, but it could be 2 or 3 weeks. You know, I don't know. It hasn't been a definitive date.
It's supposed to come out Friday or Monday is what I heard from, I would say, people who've talked directly to the hybrid model people. Will it? I don't know. But I've also heard that it's supposed to be more lenient and more freeing to open schools. So I would like to wait and see what it says, honestly. I don't know if it's, I have no idea if they're going to follow up, but the people who, they talk directly to the Harvard model people. So, and I've actually seen a draft of it, but it's not for public. So I don't know when it's going to come out, but I think it's, I don't know. I feel like this model that we're talking about isn't addressing the public's concern that has been brought to us. So I
disagree, Jack. I think the public concern is all over. I've gotten emails from parents that are very nervous about us coming back into school. We have our staff that's nervous. I have got calls from parents that are nervous about having their kids come back to school. I think there's people on each end of the spectrum, and I think we got to find a middle. And I guess I'm agreeing with Shelley. Let's start with something. Let's get some hope going about returning to school, and let's move forward. This is fluid. It can change. We can change.
I guess, Jack, what in particular, what all do you say that the public has addressed, but this is, or the public has shown concern, but this is not addressing? What subjects are they?
And first of all, I want to say, yeah, I know people are divided, but I think more people have come to us as a board that have said, we're comfortable sending our kids. We want to look at getting our kids back in school, whether hybrid or full in person. And like Lori said, it doesn't look hopeful to get our kids back in school using this model. And I'm not really honestly advocating for any certain model. I'm not coming with numbers. I'm just coming with listening to the concerns of many, many of the people who have come to us. So
yeah, and I'm listening to the concerns too. And it goes both ways. And there's a lot of people out there that are nervous.
We were elected to make a decision, guys. We can't do everything by popularity vote. I mean, we can kick this down the road. We can have another Facebook survey. We can have petitions. But at the end of the day, if we stick our finger up into the wind every time there's a decision need to be made, what the hell is the board for? We don't need to be here anymore. Everything can't be done by public referendum.
We've been elected. Anybody can run for this seat. Anybody.
So we had the Harvard model. The same people that spoke tonight, give or take a few, the same people that have been emailing and calling, they were all in favor of the changes we made to the municipal numbers because it came closer to the outcome they were seeking. Okay, so now we're talking about yet another adaptation to address the public pressure. You know, science be damned, but to address the public pressure, we're going to make another adaptation. But wait, there might be something that's better for our outcome if we wait another week or two. So come on, we need to make a decision. We're elected. You know, it's not always going to be the popular thing to do. We need to make a decision because we have administrators that have to, you know, we hired them to make decisions. So, I mean, we can have a meeting every week and let the public decide what we should do, or we can trust the people that we hired to do the damn job. So I say there's a motion on the table. Let's call the question.
I guess, Jack, was there anything in particular that you don't think this addresses?
I just think the concerns that have been brought to us the most are the concerns about getting kids back in school. And they don't have a specific number. I don't have a specific number. It's just working towards that. I mean, we all know, everybody who spoke knows that the virus is serious and it's real, and you know that it's out there. Like, there's no denying that. It's just a matter of it's hard not to compare. People get mad when you compare because it fits or doesn't fit your whatever, what you want. But there's lots and lots of schools around us who are doing it and they are fine. Like, they are not COVID huge spreaders. There are not huge staffing issues. Are there concerns? Yes, there are. But that's what we're hearing. That's what I'm researching. And so many of the teachers say, listen to the experts. Well, I've read a lot of that, and I'm going to assume most of you have too. And a lot of that is work towards getting the kids back in school, and not like no matter what the community spread is, because all of those caveats say getting community spread under control. I think what we're arguing about is what is under control. What's the magic number? And I don't have that number. So I'm just not feeling like, I don't know. I'm not feeling like.
So this proposal doesn't go far enough? Is that what I'm to assume from your comments, that this one doesn't go far enough to get the kids back in class?
I'm not really sure. I just feel like it's just changing the number, and I don't know. So
yeah, I agree. And I'll tell you what, I'll make a prediction. If we adopt this tonight and the cases go up, we're going to have the same outcry from the same people saying the same thing. We need to, let's go by building now. It's not enough to go to a municipality. It's not enough only the people that come into school. Let's go by building. It's going to forever change again until the outcomes are met. So we as leaders have to make a decision. We can wait next week. Maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe it's 6 weeks, something will come out that's better. But, we're elected to make some decisions here.
I guess, yeah, Paul, Cashton and Melrose are going by buildings. They are going by numbers in the buildings. I would prefer that. Our administration isn't hugely comfortable with that. And I respect that. Cashton meets weekly or even more than that, and it is gut-wrenching to make that decision wondering if it is right or wrong. I wouldn't mind going by building, but I want our staff to be comfortable. I want our parents to understand the administration is responsible for having a teacher in the classroom, and that could be a struggle right now. I guess to me, this it does get the kids in school sooner. We hear constantly about go by the science. Talking with those schools, the science is, yes, you don't really have the kid contact, but staffing is a problem. You've got the principals teaching in the classrooms quite a bit of the time. The one principal finally, after 3 months, was able to do 1 day of her job this last week. So it is a struggle that way. I want our staff and our administration to be comfortable with what we decide. This does get some of the kids in school, and that part I'm happy with. I am very concerned with our littles. They are the most vulnerable. At least we can start there. If we have no spread, maybe we will be more comfortable moving to a building thing in the future. But we have to start somewhere, start small, and hopefully we can grow from there.
Dave, you can stop presenting, I think.
Yeah, Dave, you can get rid of that. Okay, so I have a motion. Well, I'm going to second that motion, and then I'll do a roll call vote. I'll start with Paul.
Aye.
Tina.
Aye.
Jack.
Nay.
Lori.
Yes.
Joni.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. So just to reiterate, January 4th, pre-K through 2, 3 through 12 will based on the municipal model. We will follow the municipal model. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any more comments? I look to adjourn.
So move.
I'll second.
Motion by Shelley, seconded by Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. See you next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.